Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Black Talk Platform, where I am your host, Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, and my recurring guest, Pastor Anthony Davis, is here with me on this Good Friday night. That's 80 degrees at 7 o'clock in New York. This is just a foretaste, perhaps, of what our summer is going to be like here in New York. Welcome, Pastor Davis. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. You're right. It's a 80-degree night, daytime, daylight coming through the window. So no need
Yes.
for extra light, so it's good. But no, I'm delighted. I'm happy. I always enjoy spending time with you on this platform.
Absolutely. Listen, we could audience, we could literally be here every week because there's always something to discuss. However, we do have lives. We have family lives, we have work lives, we have community activism and all of that stuff that comes along with living. But we are always pleased to be here to talk about issues that are of interest to the Black community. We discuss it from our own perspective, but then we also make it a little bit more global because we know our perspectives are not the only ones that are important and that should be heard. However, we are here to talk about tonight, we're talking about reparations and Juneteenth, which is upon us. And we'll do a little bit of political talk. You know, we delve into the politics a lot, but we're going to leave that as more of a footnote tonight so we can talk about those things that directly impact the Black community in terms of our reparations claim. Pastor Davis and I were talking in the green room about certain things that are happening regarding reparations. Just to let you know, for those of you who do not know, I have been appointed to the New York State Community Commission on Reparations and Remedies here in the state of New York. So I'm very happy to represent the ancestors and their descendants as one of the 9 members of the reparations commission here in New York State. Um, but we were talking about things happening and that have been happening nationally. As many of you know, Evanston, Illinois, led the way in terms of a state-funded reparations bill. And Pastor Davis and I were just talking about briefly how it has now come, a lawsuit has now been filed against that bill in Illinois by, I believe, a group of Caucasians who say that it is unconstitutional. And I was sharing with Pastor Davis, and Pastor Davis, I'm going to let him jump in. I was sharing with Pastor Davis that someone had sent me a link to Yvette Carnell's commentary about this. For those of you who don't know, Yvette Carnell is one of the people who is credited with getting reparations back in the forefront of minds, not only of Black people, but also government officials. And I don't know her personally. I am not a follower, but her commentary was really good. And so I would encourage anyone to look her up on YouTube. I believe it's Yvette Carnell, Carnell, and she gives a very good commentary about why perhaps Evanston is experiencing this right now. Pastor Davis, did you want to share a little bit with the audience about what your idea, your opinion, or what you've read thus far is in regards to that?
Sure. I was looking early today at an article about it where it talks about Evanston's groundbreaking reparations program. This is an article uh, from a news outlet in Illinois. So
Mm-hmm.
Evanston's groundbreaking reparations program is now facing, as you said, a legal challenge. The program is aimed at addressing housing discrimination and segregation that took place in the northern suburb. This is going from 1919 to 1969. And the city's original plan was to distribute funds to eligible Black households in the form of $25,000 payments for home repairs, down payments or interest or late penalties owed to the city, right? So the
Mm.
measure has since expanded to include direct cash payments that can be used at recipients' discretion. All of these wonderful aspects tied to it. But that program is now under fire as a class action lawsuit is challenging the city's use of race as an eligibility requirement. And I think, as you were saying about Yvette Carnell, the uses of race, or some idea of that is always going to that's always going to be the sticking point that's going to be used by those who oppose this, right?
Yeah.
And so they're trying to say that when we talk about the U.S. Supreme Court rule that um, the 14th Amendment is not in the business of remedying societal discrimination, right? That, and there's some people who are saying that uh, they are misunderstanding or misrepresenting the 14th Amendment, um, and that we need to understand that rectifying longstanding issues like this is part of the Constitution. But just from as a professional who has worked in higher education for almost 25 years, I've been around long enough to know about the Black Male Initiative program that you see in many places. I worked for the City University of New York. That was sort of a big deal back in the, I would say, early 2000s, right? The Black Male Initiative. And a lot of that, I wouldn't classify it as reparations, but as an opportunity to help, let's say, Black men who, within the higher education arena, were having difficulties with retention, academic progress. And so I think the city council and other politicians developed a program really to address the need, right? To address the educational needs of Black men. So you saw a lot of colleges start to establish what they call a Black male initiatives. And when I used to work at Lehman College, they actually created a center,
Hmm.
uh, an actual center on the campus for a Black male initiative. They had a I forgot what they call it, but like the Center of Black Male Excellence, a Black male initiative, and they had a director for the program, and they had academic support. And what ended up happening, people again filed, even at that time in the early 2000s, a lawsuit
Yep.
against it because you cannot address race issues, right? You can't use, in this instance, a public institution, I guess, taking tax dollars to subsidize tuition or what have you. You can't address and a lot of that didn't just come from white people. Some of the opposition also came from Black people who felt that it was racist to try to say that Black men needed help, that we we needed support. But the point I'm making is that whether it's white or Black, there will always be opposition
Yeah.
to anything that tries to rectify
Wrongs.
the issues the wrongs that
Yeah.
we face. And so it doesn't, it just brought me right back to that moment. And so what ended up happening was that these BMI programs, the Black Male Initiative programs, ended up having to change the language,
I noticed. Hmm.
and that they had to be way more inclusive,
Yeah.
and they couldn't support just Black men, right? So the thing is that in most colleges, especially in the city university, you're talking about maybe it's a very small percentage of Black men attend school. There's opportunities to take advantage of the low tuition, the financial aid, everything else, but it's a matter of being able to recruit and retain and so on and so forth. It wouldn't happen. But going back to Evanston, it's the similar sort of attack, using this race as a it's almost like a dirty word,
Yeah.
to try to rectify a wrong, and you're going to always have it. So I think the community needs to understand, no matter how you try to slice the reparations pie, someone's going to attack and say it's unconstitutional to uh, to do anything according to race, even though, again, when we talk about the Federal Housing Act and everything about that, uh, it was very much a race-based program, because the ones that benefited from all those loans that the federal government subsidized was
Hmm.
not us,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think you hit it on the head when you said we have to really understand and be educated. So if not race, what, right? I will always, and I am not the authority on this, there are those who are. I will always point back to the reparations that the Japanese American descendants received. And there, it was very specific. So it wasn't about being a part of the Asian diaspora. You had to be Japanese. You had to have descended from those who were interned in those camps, and there weren't a whole lot, but nevertheless, they received it because they drilled down on who was eligible. We cannot, and that's one of the things I spent a little time today talking with a legislative aide about an event that is planned for our community. We won't mention our community anymore. I think enough people know our community
Mhm.
for Juneteenth. And I said to the person, and was very receptive. I said, let me give you this example, Pastor Davis. Sunday is a huge parade every year. It's called the Puerto Rican parade, right? Puerto
Yep.
Rican Day. I'm sorry, Puerto Rican Day parade down
Mhm.
Fifth Avenue. It's one of the biggest ones of all of the parades that are had in New York City. Puerto Rican Day parade is one of the biggest. They have their Puerto Rican flag. They're proud of it. Why shouldn't they be? They're Puerto Rican, right? And that's the flag of Puerto Rico. So we also have our flag. So let me sort of scooch up so you all can see the Black national flag. This is our flag.
Yeah.
This is our flag. It's not the RBG, and this is a point of education, right? So I kindly asked, for them to consider, because I know it's like 2 weeks away, and they probably have prepared, honor Black Americans by having the right flags displayed at this event. And this is one. And of course, there is the real Juneteenth flag. So when we're talking about education being needed, we have to start at the beginning, right? You can't even discuss reparations without starting with the enslavement of descendants of those who were enslaved in the United States. And I think that message needs to be said often and be very clear,
Yeah.
because everyone else, and not just people of the African diaspora, but everyone else since 1960 something has benefited from the enslavement of Black Americans and the civil rights movement led by Black Americans. How do we marginalize or push Black Americans out? And it was received well, and those displays will be there. But I'm real clear, and you and I are both educators. I'm real clear that we assume that people know things and they don't often. And it's up to us to ensure that they have the correct information so they can go from there. And this whole issue about race being the basis for our reparations claim has to be dispensed with. We have to use another what is the word, Pastor Davis? And I know it's there. Another model to make our claim. And I believe
It,
they started that in California. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, and it's important to have the nuanced conversations because the people, lawyers who are for this program, let's say, are talking about the arguments on both sides, right? And so one of the people who are addressing this is that there can be an argument made on both sides, and that the plaintiffs who filed the lawsuit may say that Black residents who have received benefits did not, in fact, experience discrimination or any kind of hardship today, that you can't necessarily prove these things, right? So these people are going to use that as an argument, right? That
Mm,
you just said that people have benefited from slavery.
yeah.
We know that, but what we have to understand is we have to prove that. We have to
You have to
go
prove that.
through the exercise of
Yep.
doing the analysis. So when we talk
Exactly.
about reparations, people have to understand that the opposition is prepared to deal with generalizations, right?
Yes.
That you
Yes.
cannot generalize the argument. You have to have specificity. You have to have evidence. You have to show all the stuff, how it's impacted you, right? That's why even when I have conversations with people, I'm being serious about here. Like I literally show the headstones. I was fortunate. A cousin of mine had went to the grave site of our ancestors of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to, and it was wonderful to see. These are my from the um, ancestors from who may have been born in the 1700s, and you see
Mm.
the headstones, and the headstones may have their date of birth and something to say about them. So I've seen uh, my grandparents, of course, and then my great grandparents, and then my great great grandparents. I can see, and then you get a little family history. You talk to your relatives and you get a
Yeah,
sense of history. Then shared that with people to say that, look, this is not that long ago.
it's not. It's
All
not
of
at
this
all.
stuff that we're talking about, this is my my mother's father. My mother's father was born in 1890, right? That's interesting because I don't consider myself that old, but my mother's father was born that long ago, and he was born to parents who came out of slavery, right?
Yeah.
And then I have, like I said, the headstones of their parents, and the story is there. But I can show people, because people they like narratives, but you have to show people
You have to show them.
this is where I'm coming from. And so one of my one of them, it on the birth on the tombstone, it said that it was assumed that she was born. Um, I think one of them was 1877. They
Hmm.
didn't know for certain when she was born.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they didn't know for certain. So again, this is the kind of history that you're dealing with
Yeah.
at that time. But you show the headstones to show where you came from, to let people know, yeah, this is not that long ago.
It's not.
And what they dealt with, they did whatever they earned, right?
Yeah.
My great great grandparent, what they didn't pass down,
Right.
right? So my grandfather ended up being a sharecropper,
Yep.
right? And so we didn't get anything. They didn't
Mm.
they didn't benefit from these things. And my parents certainly did, or my grandparents didn't benefit from the FHA loans. They were
Right.
discriminated against, right?
Right.
All of those things have impacted me. We have to do that kind of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we have to just keep saying it. I remember my husband's when he started his job, not too long, his friend at the job, um he's Caucasian. When there we had children around, his wife and I had children around the same time. So like many of us, we want a larger place. So we were not thinking a house. We just weren't. I mean, I was raised in a house and I miss living in a house, but that was not our thought when we were getting ready to have our child. But here is what doesn't happen in the Black community. We don't usually have parents who can say, here's money to go and put your down payment on your house. We don't have equity in our own homes to borrow from to help our children. And this is in no way disparaging him and his family. It is the opportunity that they had to be able to help him and his wife purchase a house because they've been able to buy their own home. And this is generational for Caucasian people. Most of them, of course, there's never any absolute. I always say to my kids, there's no absolute other than the Most High God, right? That's the only thing I'm thinking is an absolute. Everything else we can just, work it out. But they started at the very same day. They worked in the same place, and their circumstances were the same, aside from who they were, the families they come from. Good families, both, but our families did not have money to help us purchase a place. We literally had to work and work and work and save and save and save to be able to purchase, how we do here. He had help. So equity has never been something that this country is keen on providing, especially to Black Americans.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's not that far long ago. You're saying your mother's father was born in 1890, which meant his parents were born just around slavery or after slavery, just right at the tip. It just depends on the age, because I know the women would have children younger,
Yeah.
but we're not that far gone. We're not that far gone. And we have to let people know, whether they're Black or white, because I did hear you when you said that the opposition to the Black Male Initiative also came from inside.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes, inside, is worse than outside.
Yeah.
It really is, because we have people in high positions inside and they fight against us. Talk
Yeah.
about it, Pastor Davis.
Because the people think that people, and you mentioned equity, you mentioned people think because you make a good living now. Some people might make a good living, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I make a pretty decent living.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is this. Not that I'm hurting or anything like that, but to your point that you just made a few minutes ago, I've had friends or colleagues that I work in the same industry with, and I may have made the same amount of money or more money in the same ballpark. But their circumstances were different, where, like you just said, where they had a grandparent, not even just a parent, but a grandparent,
Mm-hmm.
give them uh, $80,000, $100,000 towards a house,
Yep.
based upon equity, based upon whatever it is that they had, because of home ownership,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they were able to pass that down to their grandchildren, my friend,
Mm-hmm.
who are white, and they were able to put a down payment, a significant down payment on a house,
Yeah.
to lower their monthly payment and be able to pay the house within you
Some
know,
few years. Yeah.
yeah, short
Yeah.
amount of time. Um, and they're doing well, right? And so I could look at my wife and I probably make as much money as my
They
friend
do.
and his wife, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
but what they have in terms of generational wealth being passed down. And then my friend's wife, in addition to that grandmother, their father, his wife's father, handed some money the same way,
Mm-hmm.
the same way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so that helped. And of course, when in addition to that, when they got married, um, the people who attended the wedding, I went to his wedding, right? I went to his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of white, well-to-do people were able to give gifts
Yeah.
at
Mm-hmm.
the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. So you had a grandmother, a father, and then the community of people that came to celebrate them being married. They walked away with hundreds of thousands of dollars
Hey.
to start
To
their life with. And
start their lives.
yes,
We're not
it,
mad. We
no,
just
I
don't
ain't
have
mad at
that
you.
same option.
So my wife and I got married. We didn't make $50,000 from our wedding. We didn't clear that
Right.
the way
Right.
he did.
Right.
And I'm not hating. Like I said, I'm not
No.
hating.
No.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's all, and I'm saying I didn't get 50,000 from my dad like she did, or
Mm-hmm.
80,000 from my grandmother like she did. You walking away in that instance could be $150,000. And that's a whole different thing. But my friend, who I love, he's a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
In his mind, my white friend, he doesn't think that that's really a benefit. That's just the way it is. That he doesn't. To
Wow.
him, he shouldn't be penalized. Not that he should be penalized, but like that they worked hard for that. They, they yeah.
Well, clearly they didn't work hard for that.
No, no, no,
Their
no.
family members, and this is something that occurs generation to generation in their family. But why is that? Why is that? Because while Black people have lost over, what is it, about, someone in the comments, please feel free to correct me on my numbers, but we've lost over 20 million acres of land to
Absolutely.
takeovers by the government, either eminent domain or just white supremacy killing off our people. And so we've not been able to have land that we can say to our kids, in wholesale ways, listen, when you get married, you're going to be okay, because it's always taken from us. Whatever we gain is taken. Of course, we all know about Tulsa. The celebration, or the commemoration rather, was just last week of the Tulsa massacre. And it's not the only massacre. So I think that I heard someone say yesterday, and it was a white person who is a anti-race racism teacher, said that when people say things such as, I shouldn't be penalized, I'm just using his words, or something like that, I shouldn't be penalized, it is because they don't want to face the facts of the history of this nation. This
Yeah.
nation while we are here, has, to me, has an intentionality about ensuring that Black Americans are never made whole.
Yeah.
It's a resentment that goes so deep that it's almost an implicit thing when you have a good friend who does not see the parallels in your lives and where the trajectory goes off because of white supremacy and a lack of equity. You're not resenting anything that he's gotten, but you're saying didn't have that opportunity, not because my parents weren't great, not because my grandparents weren't great, but because they didn't have access. They didn't have opportunities because those opportunities and that access was literally beaten out of them.
Yeah.
You know, and
But if you don't have the right history, if you don't if slavery is watered down, if if we can't share the truth of it, um, and I think about the books that you may have read and the books that I have read, and even the accounts. I have some books on lynching and um, that give some graphic details, and I think I have a book that actually gives a photographic history of lynching uh, that really goes in. And like when you really see this stuff, it's crazy. And you try to share it with people, they don't want to deal with it. They
they
don't.
don't want
There's
to
like
do it.
a cognitive dissonance, and
Yes,
so to them, it didn't really happen. And conservatives try to eliminate. That's why the critical race theory becomes important. All of these things are tied in because they don't want you to change the narrative. So to them, it's a matter of you um, not working hard, you not taking advantage of something. You shouldn't benefit from race. It's reverse discrimination. It's not rectifying something because to them there's nothing to rectify. You've benefited from being here.
right.
It's no different than the mindset of something as trivial as baseball. Now that the Negro League stats are not integrated in the Major League Baseball, that people are upset about that. They're
Yeah,
upset about the fact that people are getting recognition
yeah,
uh, for their whatever they did in the Negro League. People they don't want to see you um, gain anything. They
right.
feel they don't want you because to them you're getting something over them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We're not rectifying a wrong. You're placing someone over me
Over me.
unfairly.
Yeah,
So now Josh Gibson, who was a great Negro League superstar, is now over Babe Ruth in many of the great categories,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That they revere. They don't want that. They
No,
don't look at it as well. It's a wonderful thing to see Josh Gibson get his due. No, you're putting him over Babe. They can't stand it.
they can't.
Um, they can't stand you catching up. They can't stand you having. They just don't want it. So they have to create this narrative. So again, the due diligence is to make sure that with our meticulousness, the data, the evidence, the objectivity, scrap emotion,
Yeah,
you got to put the facts on the table, and you got to
absolutely,
have a lot of it. And so you need the historians, you need the people who analyze the stuff in addition to the lawyers, because
absolutely.
this instance in Evanston is a case, as was the BMI program before, of the kind of opposition that you're going to continue to get.
Yeah.
And they're going to have a valid argument, uh, if you can't prove your case.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to Black Flag who put some numbers up for us. Black Flag, do me a favor, go back and look again at these numbers because these are way low. These are way low. 1.6 million that they 2.6 million total acres. He's referring to my comment. I thought my number was off. My number is off, but what I got, Black Flag, is about between 12 and 14 million acres of farmland were lost in the 20th century alone, the 20th century, right? Um, um, and I believe it's a little higher than that, but that's what I'm getting. So if you do that for me, I would appreciate it. I appreciate you weighing in. I want to give a shout out to everyone who is with us tonight as we discuss this very critical issue around loss, right? and what we deserve in terms of being made whole. We are both people of faith, and we
Mhm.
believe heavily in restitution. Um, I'm a little bit more Malcolm than Martin. I tell you that. I'm also a very much Jesus, because I will go to whipping up, even if it's just by my mouth, on people in the temple. Um, but I do believe in divine retribution for harms, and I believe that as humans, as Americans here, we have to fight with our knowledge, like Pastor Davis said, um, and try to persuade others to come outside of their emotions and their desire to just keep everything for themselves. It's ridiculous. Last week, a report came out saying that CEOs are now making 200 times their average employee. Now, mind you, there are people pulling down 100, 200, 300,000 of
Yep.
dollars in those same corporations, but yet these CEOs still make 200 times the amount of their average worker. So inequity is all around us, but we are so laser like focused on the inequity that has been our history in this country. And if we're not careful, it'll run away from us with these different discussions, and even inclusion, because as Pastor Davis was talking about the Black Male Initiative, and all my work has been, I'm in New York. It is impossible if you are a servant and a social service provider, professional development, youth worker, any of that kind of stuff, to do it and say, I'm only going to work with Black people. It's just not how the city is organized. The city is not organized like that. But I have not seen the same, Pastor Davis, when it comes to Hispanics. I have not seen the same. And then we're also a kind people, right? I have not seen any lawsuits from any Black people saying, "Oh, you are requiring Spanish for this job." I have not seen that. I've not seen that. So we don't give as good as we get. So we're just trying to make claims to get a little bit of something, because we know we'll never get what we deserve. They will never
Well,
be able to
yeah,
pay for
you're
blood.
absolutely right about that. You're absolutely 100% correct on that. And a lot of that is the constituency. It's the people who represent that population understand. And you're right that those in power for us pander, or not pander, but are accommodating uh, to other people's interests. And that's why we have to be very almost tunnel vision like with our
Yes.
political leaders. We have to hold them accountable. But to do that, we have to really be united on this when it comes to
No.
the Hispanic population. With certain things, they're united on it. They're united on
Yes.
right. This is
And
it's
and
important.
don't get me wrong. And Latrell, I want to shout out to him. He said hi to both of us. He sort of alluded to this. Let me see if I can put his comment up here. He said all the other cultures have the biggest funding for their cultural days, and we get slack. That's because of what Pastor Davis just said. We lack this unity that these other communities have. And I'm not mad with anybody who can come together and do collective works around their issues. I'm not. I'm mad with us because we don't do it. And that's what we're talking about here. We need to learn collective economics. We need to learn how to unite as a people, because divided we're going to keep falling. And I think that the record has been played so often by those who oppose our claim to reparation that they're expecting that to happen again. But I think they're going to have a rude awakening as we bring all of these different factions of reparationists together, whether we are out front in the movement or providing the support that the leaders need. Whatever our positions are, they're going to have a rude awakening when they see us show up. And so these type of things have to happen. We have to make our presence known, our voices known.
But, yeah,
um
but part of the other, like whether they're Latino constituents or white immigrants or whatever, sometimes whatever level of government concedes to these people to keep them against us.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
You know
you're
what I mean?
right. Talk about
Yeah,
it.
they pit that group against us because these people feel like they've had hard times also,
Yep.
right? They feel like they've had to go through certain things. They've had to struggle. I've seen white immigrants say the same thing. They had to come with nothing and they had to work hard to do this and to do that. They don't understand that their whiteness helps them. Or that if you're Latino, sometimes that you're used as leverage against the black community.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that. But we have to understand that.
We
We
have
have
to
to
understand it.
understand that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have to understand that. And then we again, so I think a lot of what we want to do will happen because I think there's a generation of people. Look, I see these people on TikTok saying a lot of great things. I think this age of social media, this age of information is birthing a group of people who are looking at what people like you and I and those who are in the struggle have done, the mistakes we've made, and they're
Yeah.
starting to put the pieces together to really combat a lot of these issues. I don't know if it's going to happen the way I want it to happen in my lifetime or in the next 5 years, 10 years, but I do see some light at the end of the tunnel that through a lot of the struggle incrementally, because even in Evanston, they're not going to stop.
They're not gonna
They're
stop.
not, they're not going to stop because as I understand, they're still going to be giving out these payouts until there's some type of halt of
Yeah.
this. They're going to continue, and so that's what we have to do. We have to keep learning, moving, progressing until some federal government shuts something down. You keep doing it.
I'm glad you said that because I love to use the example of how people beat this drum about how they took prayer out of school. And when they took prayer out of school, everything changed. But they didn't actually take prayer out of school. What they did is said teachers are not going to start their classes with a prayer. They said that was unconstitutional. However, if a teacher wants to moderate a prayer group in the school after school hours, he or she can do so. But instead of that being, okay, that's the game you all want to play, then we'll play. Instead of playing, we just took our ball and went home and said they made sure that we can pray. And that is something that we cannot afford to have happen in the reparations movement.
Right.
Evanston, keep giving out that money.
Yeah.
Let them sue up the wazoo. Let them
Yeah.
sue. And we'll come back. Like the Fearless Fund. I wanted to mention that a little bit, just briefly. So the Fearless Fund is a hedge fund created by two Black women with the purpose specifically of awarding grants to Black women entrepreneurs. Well, they were sued, and it went all the way up to the U.S. Federal Appeals Court, and the appeals court said no, it's unconstitutional because again, there's that race piece.
Yeah.
So how does the Fearless Fund? They can keep fighting. I hope they do, up to the Supreme Court. Let them decide, whatever. But when you look, so as soon as I saw that, Pastor Davis, I looked to see how other hedge funds were giving out money. And do you know that as of 2022, we have gotten less, we Black people have gotten less than 1%
Yeah.
of the $700 billion venture capital funding. So the way they get around it is they just don't give it to us.
Right.
They don't say this is going to be for white people. They're just not going to give it to Black people. And that's what we have to learn to be. What does the Bible say? What did Jesus say, Pastor Davis? Be as shrewd as a serpent and gentle as a dove. There is a way that they can do this, and it still can be primarily for Black women. We just give up. I'm hopeful that they will fight to the Supreme Court, but the proof is in the numbers. They're not giving us the money. That's why they saw that it was a necessity to help Black women entrepreneurs, right? And now they've gotten kicked in the teeth. So we have to really be careful about using race as the basis for our claim for reparations or anything else we want to do in this country, because as soon as Black Americans get up from under an economic oppression, the fear is going to go through the roof by those who dominate the economy.
That's an interesting thing. I do think that and this is a good conversation and a lot to consider, but I still think race matters, and I think Black folk can't run from the idea of race because the nation is founded upon racism, and we have to sort of stand on that square and say, look, this country had 200 and some odd years of free labor, in
Yes.
addition to Jim Crow, in addition to, again, unfair Federal Housing Act laws and things of that nature that we couldn't take advantage of. We have to almost show, and there's people who've written books about this stuff, about redlining and
Yes. Yes.
various
Absolutely.
authors, some of whom are white, some of whom are Jewish, some of whom a lot of credible people have written amazing work on it. That's there, that we don't have to reinvent anything. But we have to show that Black folks have been treated unfairly, way differently than anybody else. And all that equity we talked about, the handing down of wealth, that can be measured. And it has been measured. People do
It
have
has.
an estimate of how much money we've lost. You talked about the amount of acres. That is the point we have to make, that we have to, because any other group of people have received reparations. I've had Jewish neighbors who got reparations for specific reasons. We have to but you have to make the argument. You have to make a foolproof argument. You have to really put in the work, because it's 2024 and these people are not giving us the money that you just talked about. It's 2024, and
2024.
those, you said 1%. Like, is that really happening in 2024?
It's
Right?
really happening. And
It's
we're some
really,
of the most brilliant minds out there, right? With
yeah,
our innovations, and they're not funding
yeah.
us.
And so this is why the meticulousness, and this is why it's serious. And what happens is when they're relying on our apathy. They're relying on us being
Yes.
apathetic, frustrated,
Hmm.
tired,
Hmm.
acquiescing to this.
Yep.
And so a lot of time, Black folk, we get tired, and we got to work every day. We got to raise kids. We got to make ends meet, and to now continue to fight this fight, it becomes exhausting. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, and
It
so
does become exhausting.
and it's important that those of us in the academic arena, the social political arena, all that, we have to do it right. It's the onus is on us.
It
It
is.
really is on us to fight for people. And the unfortunate thing in recent years, I don't think that people believe in their political leaders. They don't believe in their social. I know earlier we were talking about the spirituality and the need to to strengthen that area in our community, and that's important. Like, the faith leaders, we have to understand our call, understand that we have an obligation to fight for righteousness, to advocate for the people, to intercede for people, to care about the least of these. I mean, if we're going to stand behind the pulpit, man, or preach the truth, we have to take that a lot more seriously than we do. And I just feel like a lot of what we do in terms of the church today, and I'm talking to another pastor.
Yep.
I think we need to be critiqued a lot more in
Oh
this
yeah.
regards,
Yeah.
because I think we're not living up to the call across the board. Um,
You
and I'm not,
know,
yeah,
you sound like a whole show, because I totally agree with you, and that's why we're different. We're a little different. But sad part is that we are different. We recognize this need for critique, but we're often like pushed to the side within, because most people don't want anyone putting a mic what is it, a
they don't.
microscope.
A lot of our community don't want you to critique the church.
Yeah. Oh, inside the church and outside of the church either. They do okay over there. There was a time that whole churches were built from fish cells and stuff like that. We don't have that type of community that cares about the mission. Why? Because there's so much personal in propriety from the
Yeah.
leadership within the church, and it's not just the pastors, it is the full leadership within the church that has the community disillusioned with the church, to the point where the church is not always the first place that people run to when they get in trouble. And that's a sad commentary in 2024, that we have devolved so far or gone so far from the mandate that we once saw as central and sacred to the preaching of the gospel, that the people that we say we love in the community, the ones that we want to come into the church, we don't have their confidence to come to us. And many of them will take chances with the cops over the church. That's a sad thing. And we got to do better.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a sword that cuts both ways because, and I'm sure you've experienced it, where we've tried to reach out to do community oriented things, you know, whether I've had instances where people may have had children who were caught up in the legal system, and you're trying to get them out of trouble. You might be writing letters and advocating and doing things, and then you know, where they may need to do certain things to basically it's like reciprocity. Like you have to, like, you've done something for them, they have to do something for you. They're not going to do it. And so as a faith leader, sometimes you have to accept the fact that you could do a lot for the community and the community will abandon you sometimes. It goes both ways. The leadership can abandon the community and the community can abandon the leadership. What I'm saying is that the faith community at large have to take a lot of the ethical parts of our faith and have to be more meaningful to us as a community. It has to be something that justice has to matter, right? Not just individual salvation or individual well-being or individual prosperity or individual blessing, right? That it's the community has to be blessed, the leadership and the church goer. It's a mutual thing, right? But the impetus or the foundation of all of that is really justice. And that's a word that we don't use in church too much. We don't talk about justice.
And I think one of the reasons why it's not used too much, and I'll often say it, whether I'm in the classroom or in the church, if the Lord saw fit to have justice mentioned in his word more than 2,000 times, why aren't we preaching more about it? Why aren't we teaching more about the justice of God's cause? So the things that are important to God, we're abandoning when we get into the church. And so the people don't even know what's most important to God because we put ourselves into these little pockets of, oh, I'm a prosperity minister. What does that even mean? Because everything in the Bible is supposed to be for our upbuilding and uplifting. So, but why must I categorize myself as a prosperity minister? And I can say the same for myself. I'm a social justice preacher. I already know that. But why am I saying that? Because people don't know. People don't know that justice is so central to all that the Most High God is doing, but we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. And the people don't look to us necessarily. They will come, as you said, for a letter of support. Some of them, right? But most of them, they will go it alone because they don't see the church as it once was seen.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of it is, you know, I'm seeing this radical because I'll take a text as the woman giving her last 2 pennies into the offering in the story that Jesus was talking about. And if you really look at the text, any of the gospels that talk about that, some verses before that, Jesus talks about the fact that widows' houses are devoured, and for pretense, leadership gives long prayers, right? So, so what he's saying is that the leadership devours widows' houses. How does that happen? Well, widows can't pay for their houses. Why so? Because they're giving all their money to the ministry. So then you see this woman coming in, and she gives her last little bit of money, her two pennies, into the offering pot. And Jesus says she gave all she had to live on, right? So she can't pay her mortgage because she done put all her money into the church. But these other people haven't done that. They're giving out of their abundance. They're not really giving all they had. They're using her and devouring her houses to make a living on her back, off of her back, right? So she's being exploited. And so Jesus is pointing it out. He's showing his disciples how the religious leaders are exploiting the widow. It's not commending the widow for giving more money. That's how we tend to use that text, right? That we should give like
He
that.
gave
No,
her all.
no. Jesus is saying they're exploiting her. She's giving her all. They're devouring her house. And for pretense, they make these long-winded prayers like they really do. No, 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 no. You're destroying someone.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about justice. That in that moment, Jesus is bringing justice to the forefront. That she is being exploited,
Yeah.
and he's bringing that to the forefront. But if you don't understand that, if you don't see that nuance, right, you'll use that text to exploit people to give,
And measure their faith.
measure their faith.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got to get beyond that. I think we've done a lot of harm, and this whole individual piety or relationship with Jesus. I hope those of you who are out there listening know that this is just that's a very recent occurrence, probably in the early 90s. Oh, I have a personal relationship with the Lord. What does that even mean? Because Jesus was about community. When he told when the lady who wanted to give her oil, right? Anoint him with oil. They were like, no, that oil she can go to, she can go and sell that. And he was like, no, she's chosen the better thing. She's chosen the better thing. And also with the people, my favorite parable is with the people he had fed and the food had given out. Disciples said, Lord, let them go so that while the village is still open, they can get food and stuff. And what did he say to them? He said, no,
You give
you feed
you
them.
give them something to eat. Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
we're supposed to that reciprocity should be there. But if people don't trust the church, and it doesn't matter if you're quote unquote good or I'm quote unquote good and somebody else is considered poor or bad or whatever the vernacular they want to use, we're all affected by those who exploit, as you said, that woman with her 2 coins, and so we have to work harder.
Yeah,
We have
yeah.
to work harder.
Because we're exploited on so many ends, but again, the faith community, and in all aspects of the faith community, have to emphasize again the concept of justice, because
Yes.
that will translate into the fights that we're talking about regarding reparations, because the reparations is biblical. We're talking about Zacchaeus. I mean, he was exploited people. He's trying to give people back the money he's exploited from them. If I've taken anything by defrauding them, I'm going to give it back to them. He says fourfold,
Right.
right? So Jesus says, this day salvation has come to this house, right? In
Mhm.
what sense? That there's a restoration, there's a wholeness. And so the idea of reparations is a biblical
It's a
concept,
biblical
whether
concept.
it's an Old Testament ethic to what Jesus was talking about with Zacchaeus in that instance. So that if we don't understand that reparations is not some arbitrary thing that's secular or worldly, or we should let it go. No, if you the ethics of the Bible teaches us we should fight for those things.
Absolutely. And we can't get weary. We can't get
No,
weary. We
no.
have to keep going. I mean, there are going to be things, I am pretty sure there are going to be things that challenge those of us who continue to do this work, but we have to just build a groundswell. I want to give a shout out to another person who is really well known, and I don't know him at all. His name is Tariq Nasheed. Many of you know him. He has done a documentary called Mike Check. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And it's premiering, I believe, next Saturday in his rally for reparations. I believe this is his second or third year. Anybody can correct me doing it. Let me just share who's going to be there in Washington, D.C. The FBA rally for reparations, Juneteenth celebration in Washington, D.C. He's going to have Riza Islam, Vicky Dillard, Greg Marcel Dixon, who is a reparationist running for Congress in the state of Connecticut. I'm sorry, the state of South Carolina. Um, Afro Elite, who is a YouTuber. Um, Dr. Randy Short, Black Alpha out of Georgia. And who is the other lady? Who's this other person? Hold on, everybody. I'm just trying to make sure I get everybody on here. Oh, Dr. Mayad, I believe that's how you pronounce her. If you check her out on TikTok, she's doing some wonderful, oh my goodness, she's doing some incredible things with young people. Oh, I was so impressed when I came across her video the other day. And because we're both old school hip hop heads, his entertainment is going to be none other than Big Daddy Kane.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you all can get down to Washington, D.C. for the rally for reparations next week, I bring him up because I believe he's due the respect of having it mentioned. He had a lot of people, over 2,000 or maybe more, that last time that he was down there. He is someone who has the ear of many in the community. So when you're the voice, you're pushing out information. It's good that Pastor Davis and I have sat here for an hour talking about reparations, but we really need everybody in the community to gather around us as we do this work and we continue to fight, because the fight is before us. We have
Yes.
not even yet seen how we're going to get a lot of pushback. But we will. But we are so much better together than we are apart. So everybody has a part to play. Finally, for on my end, I wanted to talk about Juneteenth again. I love that it has become a national holiday. I hear from people in Galveston, Texas, where the holiday comes from. It is because of the ancestors from Galveston, Texas, who were enslaved longer than the other emancipated ancestors, because they did not know. And how nice of those enslavers to make them keep working without being paid. So when General Sherman got there, that's when they received their emancipation, right? So therefore, there's the holiday Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a uniquely Black American, I don't want to call it a holiday, but it is a holiday, a national holiday, commemoration, memorial, right? To
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
ancestors. It's disingenuous for anyone in the diaspora to try to co-opt what is inherently a celebration of our ancestors. As I said to Pastor Davis, I believe before we came on, or maybe at the beginning, the Puerto Rican Day Parade is this Sunday. It's a
Hmm.
huge thing in New York. Everybody goes. You know,
Yeah.
if you feel like being on Fifth Avenue, I don't. I don't like those type of crowds, but everybody goes despite what you're. How would I look going in there to their Puerto Rican Day Parade with this shirt on? Why am I repping Black Americans with my shirt on at a Puerto Rican Day Parade? They
Right.
have a huge thing in Brooklyn for Haitian Americans called Juve. Is that right? That's how you pronounce it, Pastor Davis? Juve, I
That
think.
sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a Haitian, it's a huge thing down Eastern Parkway. They have the Haitian flag. It's a huge celebration. Why would I go to Juve with the Juneteenth flag or the Black American flag? It's disrespectful. And if we don't get our diaspora family to understand this, then we are abdicating our responsibility to our ancestors. And I'm
Right.
just encouraging everyone, just start educating people. We have our own, we have a Juneteenth flag. It's red, white, and blue. It's not the same. And I'm happy that our Bronx borough president flies our flag on Juneteenth.
Hmm.
And she has for a couple of years. But you can just educate people. We can't just get mad. We got to educate people to treat us the right way, and we won't
Yeah.
stand for less. Go ahead, Pastor.
No, I hear everything that you're saying in regards to that, and I don't have much more to add. I'm just glad that you know this Juneteenth is what it is, and I want to make sure that we stand on this stuff and teach the next generation
Yeah.
and equip them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did well with our timing tonight on this Friday evening, Pastor Davis. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen to me and Pastor Davis go back and forth. We did provide you all some facts, but a lot of times we're just sort of bouncing our own thoughts off for you and for ourselves, and we appreciate you all being with us for all this time. And we're going to try, I keep saying this, Pastor Davis, but we're both two very busy people. When we can come, we're going to be here to share information. There is a lot going on. So we didn't do politics tonight. We might have needed a break. We may have needed a break from the national politics of it all. We do know that Donald Trump is scheduled to be um, sentenced on July 11th, and the convention is a few days later for the Republicans. And then, of course, in August, there is the Democratic National Convention. But before any of those events, we have the last of the primaries. And here in our community, we have a very contentious congressional contest. And so that will be interesting to see what the outcome of that is. Perhaps Pastor Davis and I can come back at the end of the month to talk about the results of the June 25th election here in New York and throughout the country. Is that okay, Pastor?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us tonight. God bless you all. Be safe where you are. Be alert. Pay attention to what they're not telling you. That means you have to go beyond MSNBC, CNN, Fox to get your news. There are things that are happening nationally, and we as Black people, we have to keep our backs covered, okay? Some of you live in states where it's easy to protect yourself. We live in a state where it's not that easy to protect ourselves. So we wish you all the best, and we'll see you next time. God bless you all. Good night.
Good night.